In this tutorial, we're going to consider an exam question that looks at an ordnance survey map and then asks you a very specific question about something that's going to happen. And you then have to, in this case, use map evidence to discuss the impact of what it is that's going to happen. Now, this should be a question that's very familiar to you because it's a skill that you have been developing steadily since National 5 Geography. The key thing is the map evidence that you use. And the most important thing is when you describe your answer, you really have to consider the level of detail you offer because you have to be going far beyond a National 5 or higher standard to achieve the marks being allocated. So let's have a look at this question. The question says, a final part of the student's study on rural land use is that they want to investigate the impact that building a dam across the River Tay near the village of Kenmore would have on land use around the loch. An energy company has proposed doing this to generate hydroelectric power. The proposal has outlined that this dam would likely raise the level of the loch up to 20 metres. Okay, so they're going to build a dam right here, round where the bridge is, in the village of Kenmore, and the loch, which sits here, is going to be 20 metres higher than where its current boundary is. Okay? Question says, using map evidence from the map above, describe the likely impacts that this would have on land uses around Loch Tay. Now, we have to consider everything around the loch, not on this side because this is the other side of the dam. So what land uses lie 20 metres, within 20 metres of the current loch side? Okay, so if that's the loch side, we have to go up two contours, and anywhere that lies within two contour lines, because each contour represents 10 metres, lies within an area that's impacted. So let's start with the transportation. What's our map evidence? The A827. Right, it's parts of the A827 that run down the loch lie within 20 metres of the current loch shore. So we're going to have lose parts of our road. So what is the likely impact? Well, of course, it's not just going to be something that gets allowed to happen. We're going to have to divert or raise this road up to a safer location away from the loch shore. Because remember, the height of a loch does go up and down depending on the amount of rain and the season. So whilst we know it's going to go up 20 metres because of this dam, that might be even higher in the wet season when the loch's full of water. So we have to then consider about diverting a road. So we have to go higher, or maybe we have to tunnel into the hillside. That's going to be significant additional economic cost of rerouting a road that runs alongside the loch. Okay, so there's one thing that you want to discuss. Another impact is we can see a lot of tourism going on around this area. So, for example, we've got a crannog here, a historical site with a picnic site and car parking. Now, this is all clearly lying within 20 metres above the loch side. So this is all going to disappear under this raised level. So that's going to be an impact on the business that's making money from having this historical site that's going to go underwater. So there's a loss of an historically important monument. Parking is lost, so that's going to need to be moved. There's going to be a social impact of the loss of a picnic site, so people are going to have to potentially move it somewhere else to provide that service. Likewise, the toilet. There are also a number of buildings. There's a house, there's a community here clearly with a lodge. These people are going to need to be reimbursed because they're going to have to be relocated because their homes are going to be flooded. So that's going to cost additional resources. Okay, so what else could we? That's a couple of ideas. What else could we talk about as we move around? Once again, always looking for evidence of something that's going to be impacted, positive or negative. So we have more businesses down here. We have a cycle hire shop, but with that symbol. We have a fishing, we have a ferry. Now, they're not all necessarily going to be negatively affected. And we clearly have some tourism, and we're going to have a dam. So the dam itself, hydroelectric dam, might generate a positive impact because it becomes a tourist attraction in its own right. So you could write a couple of sentences to discuss the positive impacts of increased tourism. But the loss of business, people who run their own businesses, who have to relocate or just have to shut down completely, that's worthy of a discussion point. Right, what have we got on this side of the loch? Well, within 20 metres is this whole area here, so we have to assume this is probably agricultural land of some description. The Ordnance Survey map doesn't tell us, but we can see that there's nothing else there. And if we know Scotland well enough that we don't just have hillsides of nothing, there tends to be either some type of crop growing here in the low areas, or there'll be sheep farming. The bottom line is we have a loss of agricultural land, and you want to have a discussion about the impact that that's going to have on the surrounding area. Okay, so the key to answering this question is to pick up map evidence. Now, map evidence, as you will have learned over many years, can be referring to specifically named things on the map or giving six-figure grid references, which in this case we don't have in this map excerpt. So you wouldn't be able to use six-figure grid references. What I'd encourage you to do is highlight the following things. You're always going to think about impact on transportation. You want to think about social impacts. So that might be things that people would like to be doing or currently can do that they won't be able to do. You want to think about any environmental damage that might be done. So we've got loss of forestry, natural forestry here. That's habitats that are going to be impacted by flooding, being flooded by the loch. You have to think about the economic impacts of loss of businesses and jobs and employment. You can think about positive impacts if you can think about it. Agriculture is always going to be a factor that's likely to be impacted by flooding. And depending on the number of points, that would be depending on the number of marks, that would be the number of points that you have to make.